right, we are back in front of the bookshelf, which means it is time for a recommendation. I recommend Conan and the Amazon, which is about Conan and an Amazon queen, if I recall correctly, going out in search of a lost city and its lost treasures. And along the way, they encounter typical Conan threats: brigands, bandits, a wizard. I've only read this one once, I believe, but I do vaguely recall it being quite enjoyable. So give it a try. And with our recommendation out of the way, hello, kiddos. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, and that you are having a great day. And in today's video, I'm sitting back in a chair that does not squeak, relaxing, and having a little conversation with you guys about the TCG market, Pokemon, One Piece, because guess what? I know the secret. It's all a scam. That's right. In today's video, we are here to talk about the fact that there are some people out there who posit, in addition to the fact that cards should not have huge secondary market value. They should all be $1 or 15 cents. And all boxes should be sold at MSRP or below MSRP. And anyone who sells it above MSRP is a scammer. There are people out there who genuinely believe, with 100% certainty in their heart, that the entire TCG secondary market, the entire collectibles secondary market, they believe it's all a Ponzi scheme. And that's pretty interesting. Because, yeah, while it's true that the TCG market, like any market, requires participation in order to continue running, that doesn't make it a Ponzi scheme. For those of you who don't know, a Ponzi scheme is a kind of financial scam where someone comes along and offers you, dear investor, huge returns in exchange for buying into this, whatever the scheme ends up being. And the first few adopters do end up seeing some crazy returns or whatever. It's just that those returns are financed through the buy-ins of later adapters, later investors. And the scheme works because it constantly has people paying in to pay off the early adapters. And once it all comes crashing down, the people who have most recently adapted get left with nothing. We see this a lot in the world of crypto, where new altcoins get hyped up and bought up, and then the developers and the first adapters sell it for whatever they can get, leaving everyone else as baggies. I think it's called a rug pull. I'm not very well educated in the world of crypto, but I do know that a lot of people get left with worthless digital currency, which I know, redundant phrase right there, worthless digital currency. I know, I get it, but still, let's tackle the idea that TCG finance could all be one big Ponzi scheme. Well, it's certainly true that Ponzi schemes exist in the world of TCGs. The big example I have, and that most people will, I think, remember, is MetaZoo, the MetaZoo card game, which financed its bills by selling overhyped sets that really, really needed more people buying in order to just continue keeping the lights on. They owed a lot of money to a lot of people, investors, collaborators, artists, etc. And they financed those bills by getting more and more people, theoretically, hyped up on the newest whatever they were selling, with results that were kind of obvious for everyone, because it's just a really poor way to finance a business and a company and all that jazz. But with that example out of the way, does that mean the wider TCG market is a scam and a Ponzi scheme? No. No, it does not. Because while it's certainly true that One Piece and Bandai Namco, it's certainly true that Bandai Namco would stop selling One Piece boxes if people stopped purchasing One Piece boxes. That's certainly true. That doesn't make it a scam. That just means it's a business that has made a financial decision based on income. People have stopped buying the product, so they will stop selling the product. They do not need people buying the product in order to cover the bills of existing older product. Instead, what we see happening in the world of TCG finance for games like Pokemon, One Piece, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh's doing really great right now, by the way. A little side tangent there. Maze of Muertos is doing really solidly as a set. It leads me with quite a lot of optimism. But with that out of the way, the world of TCGs and the TCG secondary market is less of a Ponzi scheme and more of a just natural market supply and demand. You know, a lot of these products out there that people are up in a tizzy about because of their current price tags, it has less to do with the idea that it's all one big scam and needs people to constantly buy into it, and more to the fact that it's just regular old supply and demand. Really, it's that simple. The dynamic with some of these boxes that some people are really convinced is a scam. Like these people legitimately believe it. Let's look at the examples here. We have a genuine demand for some of these products. Look at Destined Rivals. Destined Rivals we have is one of the most expensive Pokemon boxes on the market right now for a regular sealed booster box. I don't know what it's at right now, but last I looked, it was like $600. Crazy stuff. And there's a lot of people out there who are 100% convinced that this set will be reprinted in the near future. And they've got a lot of reason to believe that too. Pokemon's been very loud, very public about their acquisition of new printers, their desire to keep up with demand for the market. So they've got new printers. I think they bought a distribution company. I think they bought a trucking company. Have they bought Walmart? Is Pokemon going to buy Walmart to make sure that everyone's going to have access to the Pokemon cards? I don't know, but they might. There's a lot of people out there who genuinely believe that Destined Rivals is going to have a major reprint coming soon. And despite that, Destined Rivals booster boxes are still quite pricey. If it was all one big Ponzi scheme, you would see people panic selling out of the market. Instead, what you see is people who are still very confident that this stuff will be reprinted, not having a terribly negative effect right now on the existing supply. The existing supply is still in high demand. It's still selling. People are still buying it because that new supply wave hasn't hit yet, and therefore the actual supply versus the demand dynamic has not changed yet. Whereas if it was all a scam, I'd personally be very confident that if it was all one big scam and you knew that supply was coming with 100% certainty, people would be freaking out right now trying to get this stuff off the books before the new supply came. And that may still happen. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe when the Destined Rivals supply, reprint, whatever does come through, it'll all go to zero, right? But I don't think it will. I think it'll definitely go down, but I don't think it's all going to go to zero. Look at the other great example. We know for a fact that more Heroines is coming for One Piece. We know that the new Heroines set, which is highly desired by a lot of people, we know that more of that's coming. The reprint's been announced. We certified coming. It's still pretty expensive. People still want the hell out of those booby cards. Some of the cards in that set are like $1,000. And the boxes are still crazy expensive. Which means it's probably not a scam since the demand is still very much there. No one who is part of the idea behind a Ponzi scheme is that you constantly need new investors. Okay, with regards to the secondary market for TCGs, new investors, new collectors, new players, they're not going for the highest end items. At least most of them aren't. I know that there's exceptions and all that jazz. People who are just getting into Pokemon, they aren't looking for the most expensive booster box possible to buy to get into Pokemon. They are looking for either a few packs to crack for themselves, or they're looking for a deck to play the game with. And Pokemon decks are really cheap, so they're just going to spend a few bucks to get that done, right? I think you can spend under $100 to get a decent deck for Pokemon. The same thing's true of One Piece. No one who's just getting into One Piece, again, generalizing, I know that there are exceptions, blah, blah, blah. No one who's just getting into One Piece is looking to spend, I have no idea how much the Heroine set is right now, but it's probably still over $300. No one's looking to spend $300 on a booster box. They're looking to buy a deck to play the game. maybe a handful of cards that they want to collect. You know, again, I know it's a generalization. I know that there are people who just get into the game who are like, "Yep, sign me up for that booby set." But that just goes to show that there is demand there. There is legitimately demand, and it's not all one big scam. Yes, there are scams out there. There are people who create scams in anything that involves money. If money's involved, scams are right around the corner. It doesn't matter what it is. I can think of there was a website created by it was a social media influencer created some website where you could buy fractional shares of high end cards for Pokemon, I think, and that ended up being a scam, I believe. I think so, anyway. Maybe I'm wrong, but I vaguely recall that all coming out as one big scam. There are scams out there on the market, but it's not all one big scam. And to have this kind of highly emotional gut reaction to say, oh, well, I can't afford it, so it's all one big scam. That's just not how it works. Yeah, there are scams out there, but it's not all one big scam. Because if it's a scam, then it's the longest running uh, Ponzi scheme ever. Because 30 years is quite a long time for this stuff to go. If it were all one big Ponzi scheme, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, share, subscribe. And yeah, leave a comment below if you agree with me, disagree with me, or are going to read Conan and the Amazon. Let me know. Check out the Discord, check out the Patreon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.